staff. Aaron Heiner Simpson is our CTO and a co-founder of the business, and Brandon Fleming is our director of customer support. I know you've interfaced with those two gentlemen probably a few times in the history of dealing with Stone. They are the best in the business as far as Milestone and S2 administration is concerned, and they're here to talk to us and train us about how to make these two systems one and what benefits we get out of doing that. So we'll turn the time over to Aaron and Brandon. Thanks again for joining us. And keep. I think one final comment is questions. There's a place where you can do written questions in the comments section, or Aaron and Brandon will take a couple of breaks throughout the presentation to answer questions. So there we go. Aaron, take it away.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We're going to try not to burn everybody. I know everybody's semi-burnout or fully burnout on anything web-based right now. So we're going to keep this short and relatively short and very sweet as we go through and just hit the highlights. If there's anything in what we talk about today that you'd like to look at for your systems in the future, just let us know and we'd be happy to go in depth on any of these. We'll take questions at the end of each section and just try to make sure we're hitting all the high points. So with that, we wanted to start with just test the most key integration that we do, which is the integration of S2 into Milestone. So I guess to start with, one is just to be aware of the licensing that's involved. So with a Milestone S2 or really any access control system that's integrated, they all look the same. So even if you're not an S2 user, this is the way that access control looks inside of Milestone. So you'll notice here that we do have access control, XProtect Access, and right here we have 15 doors of access control. So the way that they license it is one is on the S2 side, there's a total portal count, which is your door count. And then on the Milestone side, you pick how many doors you want to integrate. And so it's just important to know that you need to make sure you have that integration in place. Once that integration license is there, you'll notice we have a new option over here on the left. So this is our access control integration. Once we do that, we added our controller and we now have an integrated system. The actual integration for us is really quick. It doesn't take us much time to pull those in. There's a few files we need to put in place, but once that's done, the integration's in place. It exists automatically in your smart client, which we'll show you, as well as in your mobile apps. So you have all that access control integration through your mobile as well. And I'll actually swap over to mobile here once we get to the bottom, and we'll look at that. So first thing you'll see here is that one option we have is operator login required. So what this does is that as we come into S2, or sorry, into your Milestone Smart Client, so if we are logged out, a lot of times your permissions are going to be based on each user, right, in your access control platform. So you'll see right here now, it's also asking me to log into my access control system. That is 100% based on that box being checked. If you don't want individual operator logins, then you don't need to, but we can come into that. And it will now load that side of the system. The other thing that's neat is the actual associations of cameras to doors is quite straightforward. So you just come in, so we can say our main entry. And from here, we just drag and drop. So if we have different cameras that we want to associate, we can just bring them over and drag them on top of the door that they belong to. So keep in mind, you can have more than just one camera associated per door, which is nice because it's quite frequent to have multiple cameras looking at the same door area. But be aware that that association is done there. Access control events. So these events right here are directly pulled from your access control platform. Depending on which access control system you're on is going to change what's available here. But your event categories by default have some associations made, but you can add and change these. So for example, if I wanted to know, this is one that me and Brandon were playing with, was I wanted to know every time I get a network timeout. And so I would come in and I could say network node timeout. I want that to show up as an error in the system. That way I can make associations between that and error from when S2 sends that over to Milestone. When I get a network node timeout, it's going to flag it as an error. And that way, if I'm in my alarm manager, making alarms, node offline, I can come in and have a trigger of my access control events. I can say anytime I get an error, and then I can come in and say an error from what, right? So I can come in here and I can select from the available nodes or system components and associate that node or that resource to it. So that's the benefit of having those there. So I know if anybody's dealt or looked at this in the past, that it's a little bit, sometimes you're not sure what those associations are for the access control events. We can also have access request notifications. So this allows us by default, this one's in here, but this one is, so if there's an access request at a door, we can have it automatically show the related cameras, which we did here. And then we can have it also have the camera, related camera speaker and mic associated as well. We can add additional access request notifications. So if you had some specific request and you wanted it to directly tie to a different camera or speaker or mic or play a specific sound alert when it pops up on your screen from that access request, we can do that. So that's what all of these sections across the bottom. So not a whole lot here you need to worry about per se, but it's important to recognize that these are here. We'll go ahead and drop that one. And card holders, which I'll show you on the Milestone, or sorry, on the smart client side. So when we're looking at within the access control, when we're looking at our access control inside of Milestone, you'll see that we now have a new access control tab. And again, as soon as that integration is done, this isn't a plugin you have to install, it just shows up. So coming down, here's my activity log coming from S2. You'll notice right here my different filters. So we have today, I can set my timeline. I've also got this live update feature, which just allows it to scroll just like it would in your access control platform. So it's just going to automatically feed new activity through there. I can filter by event types. So if I don't want specific types, I only want to see access requests, I can filter those out and quickly get down to those. And I can filter by doors. So all doors or other resources that are available to it. And I can come select those from here. So these will show me events. Let's look at one, for example, here. So I did mention that we have associated cameras. So here's one where we have 2 cameras associated. So by default, we see that. Let's make that a little bigger. And you'll see it puts me right at the point in time where we have Steve coming into the back warehouse. Support entry. 1 camera associated, and it puts you right at that point in time. So tying these access control events directly to the video can be a really handy thing. I can also come in and say, that is not how you spell Brandon. Anytime that we had activity around this, so anybody named Brandon is going to show up on our list here. So we can do quick searches around different parameters that are there. So that's nice right here from our events. We can also come into our doors, and you'll see right here, if I look at the available doors that we have from our access control system, we have our little icon showing the red doors are locked. The green ones are currently in automatic unlock schedules, so they're extended unlock. But I can look at those, and now over here to the right, you'll see these have speakers and mics. I can turn those on. So now I can hear at that door. I can talk to that door while I click and hold there. You'll see a little bit of a green line building there just below the mic as I hold that. So I'm talking there. And then right here, I have the ability to momentarily unlock that door. So someone's at the door, I can hit it. And these are all features of S2. So they can momentarily unlock, lock. I can disable and enable that door altogether. Here's my 2 associated doors. Same feature, double click to go full and back. So very handy again. I've got just the ability to see all of your S2, all of the common stuff that you would use, especially in a real-time scenario. It's very handy. Card holders. So these are all of my S2 card holders that we currently have. Can load those, but gives me the same options that we have within S2 to come and select and see where people have been active. So I can come click on Brandon, pulling my photo ID from that as well. But again, links me just to activity for that person. So anybody that knows Brandon, I apologize, but he's our guinea pig today. So that is how S2 looks inside a Milestone. In addition to this, you'll also see if you come over to your live screen, and we now have, I'm going to create, let's go ahead and set up a new, second here. Let's go ahead and set up a new view, and let's just do it in my private folder to keep it clean. And I'm just going to do let's do a couple doors. Let's go here. So now within our system overview, so anybody that knows how to build views inside of the Milestone Smart Client knows that you have all of these options here, right? So in addition to plotting cameras, which are here under our server that we call Diamond, we have all of these other features like maps. Well, I now also have access monitor. If you drag and drop that into a frame, you'll see that I can pick which door I want to be represented within that frame. So if I come in and say, well, I want my vestibule. So it's going to take the vestibule door. What sources? Well, I want everything. Okay, I want my reader and my door. What cameras? If I have multiples, I can select which one is relevant to it. What type of events do you want to show up? Maybe I don't care about the warnings and alarms, but I do want granteds, denieds, and requests. Great. Command types. This is if I'm going to be toggling that door. You know, sometimes you may toggle it. So maybe only momentary unlocks. Newest activity on top, hit OK. And I now have an access control door inside of here. So what this does is it's going to associate my door. And as I click on it, it's going to take me to that point in time of wherever that access event was. So it immediately takes me there, which is a very handy thing to do. And I've got that association right here. So I could have this side by side along other cameras that I needed or other doors. So again, I don't have to keep it with just one. I can drag a separate one and I could have a different door at a different location. So just that simple, you pull them in, activity logs load to the side. You'll also see down here at the very bottom that I have the ability to do my momentary unlock right from here, or I can toggle that from unlock to lock to disable to enable. So I have the ability to do that. There's also some kind of fun things that we can do that are access control related around overlay buttons. If anybody has not used overlay buttons in Milestone Smart Client and you have components or features in your system you interact with, this is a really nice feature. So access control here is new because we're integrated. I can come down and say, okay, this is my vestibule portal. I want to come here and I want to overlay. So this is if I didn't have this feature here, maybe on any standard view, or maybe you just have a view of one of your gates that's integrated. I can come and overlay this button. Maybe I don't want it to say momentarily unlock. I want it to say open. I want to resize it a little bit. We're going to make it a long, skinnier button here at the top. Well, now you'll notice that as I hover, when my mouse is on the screen, my overlay button pops up. When I'm away from the screen, no pop. So overlay buttons, that's an interactive button. You'll see it showed a momentary unlock on that door. But I can overlay these really on any screen. So in addition to that, if you have all these resources and third-party, not third-party, but just other resources available either through your cameras or I/O modules, access control I/Os, we can take those and start to leverage them. So in addition to these access control commands, I can come up and I could say, I want to see my other devices and I want outputs. So maybe these are outputs that are available on my cameras. So I can drag and drop those onto now they're interactive buttons within my client. So just be aware that a lot of these can be overlay buttons on top of your images, which we find to be really handy for controlling features within your system or manually activating things. So we could, events, we could take a user-defined event, which is a button you create inside a Milestone. Those are created over here. Within the management client, we just create and they turn into available buttons within our system. And now we can plot those and I could have those automatically activate a set of features or a rule within Milestone. So it gives us a manual activation point of those. So let's get rid of that. Okay. So that's where the access control. I think we'll take just a second here and ask if there are any questions around that. Anything in particular someone would like to know?
There's nothing in the chat right now, Aaron, but if anybody has anything they want to ask in particular on this one, feel free to chat it, or I think you can unmute yourself and ask.
Sorry, I started it just a minute late. Is this just an upgrade or is this a purchase?
So the access control integration is a third-party plug-in to Milestone, so it is a purchase. So Milestone has a per door license, and then we do need to pull on depending on what access control platform you're on. So S2, in their case, they do it for the number of portals. The actual deployment of it, though, from our perspective, is so simple and quick that there's really not much from Stone side of things. So it's just getting those in place. Things like overlay buttons, though, if in reference to those are available to anybody who has Milestone. You'll just see different options available depending on what your what features you have, right? So if you don't have the access control integration, you may not see that tab, but there are other, most features inside Milestone will show up as available resources to plot as overlays. All right, so we're going to, this is something we wanted to show here. This is a pop-up that comes from the Access Optimizer. So somewhat similar, but you'll notice here from here, I can accept this as a call, I can decline the call, or I can grant access to that door. So this comes as part of that optimizer. If you've not, if you are using a lot of access cameras, which most of our customers do, let me pull up a different view here. But there's a lot of features that we can do in here. So for example, let me see if we can get, let's actually go to a camera that would make sense here. Okay, so if you're looking at a camera, what Access Optimizer does is it gives us some direct controls to access devices. So this is something that Access developed. And let me show you where it's found, because if you haven't used this yet, most everybody that we talk to when we let them know about this, this is a free feature that plugs right into Milestone. Access developed it for Milestone. And you can come to Access's website, just type in Access Optimizer for Milestone, it pulls up and you can download it and install it. So this is where you get it. What it does is, first off, on the management client side, you'll notice we have a new tab here. It updates, it'll automatically check for updates and load them. It's really, really simple to update as new features are available. It also loads this whole section down here. So to start with, we have Camera Assistant. So anybody that's dealt with the cameras knows that sometimes to get to the cameras, we've got to navigate around to get to them. This actually puts the camera UI right inside of Milestone. So every camera, whether it's the old user interface or the newer interfaces that Access has, is available here. So if we're dealing with users, network settings, whatever it is, the entire camera interface is right here within Milestone. So again, if you haven't seen this, very convenient. It's really handy, saves a lot of time. And we can go through all of those. So we get that. Operator controls. So these are things I'll show you over here in the management, for example. So here's a camera. I have a built-in operator control down here of autofocus. That's available. If anybody, doesn't happen a lot, but if occasionally your cameras go out of focus and you have a camera that supports autofocus, that is a lot easier than navigating to the camera's web page, right? Click on it, tell it to autofocus, it does it right there from inside of Milestone. So very handy. Again, not having to manage them as separate systems, but as one. Some other things you'll notice is up here in our client settings, we now have all of these access door station options. So if we have a door station, which we have one at our back door, that's the one that Brandon just hit the button on. If you're using an Edge license plate verifier, then we would have options around that. Here's our optimizers for our client. Way to update here. If you have any fisheyes, Axis fisheyes, that they have their own dewarping that is natively visible and shown inside of Milestone. So it takes that rounded image and it flattens it out. So those are built again now right into my client. So down here we have the operator controls, and then so those are operators controls options, and then we also have our speaker managers. So we are big fans of speakers inside of Milestone, really within any system. They're relatively cheap devices to add, and we feel like they bring a ton of value. So within the speaker manager, there's a few things. Actually popped up another window. But you'll see that I can look at our available speakers here that are on our system. I can associate cameras. So if I want to come in and associate those, it pops up this window. I can come into my device groups and pick which cameras are associated to this speaker. And then from here, here's all the available audio files that are currently loaded onto the speaker. And I can both add and remove from here as well. I can adjust volume controls. So again, this is all stuff typically that we need to go into the speaker to control, but it gives us this capability right here with the Axis Optimizer. So big fan of that for that reason. Let's see. And we did talk a little bit about the door station already. I showed you what that pop-up looks like. So if you do ever have that need and you want that pop-up for different intercom button presses, you'll see right here we also have our call history. So we can quickly come in. There's Brandon pushing our button a few minutes ago. And I can go back through and look at our different calls that have come through. So these are just the recent ones that we've had in there. So again, all part of that Axis Optimizer. So that's a nice, nice feature to have. All right, so now we want to shift gears a little bit over to the IoT devices and some of the ones that we've been really excited about. So let's start with, okay, let's start with Halo. Halo's one that if you're not familiar with Halo, we feel like it's a good one to become familiar with. Let's see. 1 second here. So Halo are these smart sensors. Originally, they got their start a couple of years ago at ISC West. They won a product of the show, and they were really for their vape technology. They were able to, the way that they detect vaping, but they also do quite a few other things besides just that. I'm just getting the password for that. Okay, so here's what the Halo vape sensor looks like. So this is if I log in directly. It's a PoE device. It can detect all sorts of stuff. It's got different views. So here's my dashboard view. Here's my graph view. It'll build out sensors. It shows the available sensors and a little more detail on each one. So temperature, humidity levels, light levels, sound. So they have kind of these aggression type detectors. Again, not 100%, but they work quite well if you're trying to detect some type of loud or different noise. CO detection. So again, all of these different type of the vape detection, parts per billion, are all built into this sensor. From here, you'll see we have the different events we can pick. So if aggression, I can set a threshold of 5 if I go above that. Again, this is all on within the Halo sensor itself, but I can continue to add all of these different types of detectors, and I can set thresholds for those right here. And then once those are in the system, you'll see right here, it actually delivers an RTSP string to Milestone that we can pull right in. It also allows us to ingest generic events from that system. So we come in and we set those up so that we are looking for Halo Vape, Halo CO, Halo CO2, Vandal, aggression, and so forth. And we're watching for those, and the Halo unit will actually send these commands over. And when it does, we can trigger whatever series of events we want. So we can activate a PTZ preset. We could pop it up on our video wall. If you had an operations or a security booth, you could have that pushed to a top position and activate an audio file. Email, yeah, email. So really kind of at your, your discretion. So just a really handy tool for more of the environmental type sensors. We always try to emphasize that the Milestone's good for more than just surveillance, right? We can take in all sorts of different sensors, including one like this that's Halo. Audio is another good one. I'll give you an example of something we've done recently here at our office for an internal need. And that was we noticed one night during a demo actually with a customer that we had a guy riding his bike up to a bunch of our vans that were parked out back overnight, shining his flashlight in, looking for a kind of a smash and grab. Fortunately, that night he did not do anything, but it just got us to finally get off our butts and turn some features on. We've recently rebuilt our entire demo environment, so everything here had to be, we recently started with a clean slate. So within, if you don't know of this tool right here, so within the tools, we have our options for the system. And you'll see in here, we have all these options if I need to set up a mail server, so forth. But if you come over here, you'll see that we have audio messages. This is where we can come and upload audio files. So these are features that the cameras have directly on them or the IP speakers. But within Milestone, instead of having those all as independent systems running, doing their own thing, we can do it all through Milestone. So this is where we come and we upload any audio file that we want to leverage within Milestone. So what we found was that we took a feature, which we'll talk about in a minute, called part of the Access Guard suite, called their loitering guard. And we needed that to do something for us. So we needed, when we had a loitering trigger out back, or we actually used a third-party edge analytic called Evalon, or Hemez, formerly known as Hemez. But we had these needs, and so you'll see if I look at the way we built our rule, in rules, if you're not familiar with them, they're really quite simple to set up. They may look intimidating, but they're not as you build them. It just gives you these links to go in and build them out. So what we did is we performed an action on an alarm from our loitering guard. This comes directly from our camera. It's an edge analytic from this camera. And I did it outside of a time period. So I called it loitering hours. So outside of a time window, we wanted to play an audio message of trespassing, which was the one I uploaded, to our speaker. And that's really it. And then we also have it flag in our alarm manager, and I'll show you what that looks like. But that was it, is we had people showing up outside of our building after hours, doing weird stuff, looking in our vans, digging through our trash cans. We've got a very interesting after hours activity that goes on. But now we have those come through. So for example, here's loitering east side. Here's somebody coming after hours. And as soon as that audio file plays, they tend to scurry off. We've yet to have another issue. They pull up. There's some funny ones here. We also have one. Let's see if we can get one on the west side. Now this guy walking through, I'm not sure why he's walking through here, but you'll see him looking up at our building, throwing his arms up. He's not sure. And it is, I mean, this thing gets loud. So, and when people don't tend to like that a lot, when they're alone at night and they're in your area, they don't like something yelling at them. That audio file is invaluable. And you can upload any type of audio file that you want. And so we get these just night after night. We get these different types of alarms. There's two different directions. So this one we're looking at, I'll show you these in just a minute, is an Edge Analytic on the thermal camera. There's a couple of views of it. So this is the type of proactive type of solutions that we're big fans of. Again, all within one platform. We're pulling what capabilities of the edge systems like cameras that have these big processors, intercoms, IP intelligent speakers, and we're pulling them all together through Milestone, so you're not managing them as multiple systems. And there you go. And this is very common. We've yet to have anybody that played this audio file that did not immediately turn and walk off. Okay. Let's see here.
Hey, Aaron, I have a question. This is Pat.
Yeah.
Do the Access Network speakers, I'm pretty sure they require a Milestone license. Is that correct?
They do, yeah. So in Access, so if we look at our lobby speaker, so this is an actual device. It's the Access C2005. This is a recessed in-ceiling speaker. We've got a couple out back that are horn speakers or box speakers, but they're all IP speakers. But they are licensed within Milestone. That being said, you may notice that on some of your cameras, if you come into Milestone, this is my hardware. That example, let me look at another one. There we go. So you may notice that you have it on other cameras where you have a camera and you see all these other features within that camera. Well, you've already licensed this hardware device, right? So you may see that you've got a camera, but I've got a microphone and a speaker on this camera. So this is a 3.5 millimeter jack in this case that's available on this camera. So this is a Q3517. Even though it doesn't have a built-in mic or speaker, I could always take an out third party like a LaRue speaker or mic and plug it into those. And in that case, I wouldn't have that license because it's a built-in capability and I can leverage that just the same. So you'll see if I take a camera like, for example, this Q6000 in our lobby. So this is a 4-sensor camera. And if you come over here to the client tab, that we can see associated speakers and mics. Let me refresh because we did associate those here. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, yes, it's a license if you're doing a dedicated speaker or mic. If you're not, then it's not necessarily, because we can leverage what's already there. So this is just a good point, is any camera in our system, you can associate any audio source to it that's available in your system. So if we wanted to grab a mic that's available, I could come to our mics, could go and say, I want our lobby speaker mic. And now that the speaker and the microphone from that are now associated to that camera. So that's really nice as you're clicking. You'll notice in your client, you're clicking around. Let's go to our office view. One of our Q6000s. And you'll see right down here. So as I click around to my different audio sources, the associated speaker or mic is going to be automatically associated with it so that I can talk directly from this location. So associating audio sources to the cameras is, we feel like, an important thing to be aware of. Any questions around just other types of devices besides cameras, any of these IoT type sensors? We do see, just while we're waiting for any to come in, there are a lot out there. You know, there's lighting, a lot of more intelligent lighting. We're seeing more where PoE type light systems are becoming more popular. We'll see more of that. Switches, there's some switch manufacturers that will pull right into Milestone, so you can manage that switch user interface right from within Milestone. IO devices, any type of IO device, simple, very simple to pull in. Talked about the audio, environmental sensors, any others, radar type systems. Hopefully you've all seen our radar. And we've got a couple that we play with here at the office, but this is an Axis radar. We also have a Spotter RF radar that we play with, and that one auto tracks. Again, this is just a Google Earth shot with the radar showing overlays on it. And if you haven't seen these, kind of cool. We'll look at, so if you look here, here's the actual activity. But you'll see right here, it's trying to categorize what's going on. So it's, again, can be a very handy tool, something other than camera. If you're aware, you know, pixel-based detection of things is not always the best option because there's so many environmental factors that you know, can throw it off or give you false positives. Radars are going to be more stable on that detection. All right. So next, unless we had any questions on that, we wanted to just jump over and finish up with the edge type stuff. So one here, for example, we talked about our Access Guard suite. So we're a big fan of this. This is now built into all the newer versions of Access cameras. It's a free group of analytics that you have. In the past, it was not, but with the firmware update, it can be. So Q series, P series, and I believe even, I'm not sure if the M series do or not, but I think it's more of just a capability of that camera. So P and Q series and possibly M. But you will notice that if you come into your camera, you come down to settings, we come down, we now have these, excuse me, 3 different analytics here at the bottom. These are considered your guard suite. So fence guard, loitering guard, and motion guard. So loitering guard is the one you saw. And open it up, you'll notice it pops a new tab up here at the top. This is my loitering guard. I can come and add additional zones, but what you're looking at here is the perimeter that I've built out. We've got points around it, and we're saying if anybody is in this area for more than 12 seconds, we want an alarm from it. So I can also exclude areas from this. We can set filters on small and swing objects. So if we know we don't want to have, you know, we want to say, okay, what's the smallest object we should detect and what's the largest we should detect? We can set that. Then we can do swing objects, great for like trees and things that are in the scene, maybe, you know, plastic that flaps in an area sometimes, just to help offset those. So we allow some of those movements. But as they come into here, we get those alerts. What's really nice about this, you'll notice this is called south loitering. Once I've set this up on the camera, I come back into Milestone. And again, instead of going through this big process of, oops, sorry, that's not the right camera. Parking. You'll see down here on my camera that I now have the ability, I had to do a replace hardware on this because it reaches out to the camera and pulls all new configurations back in. But I reached out and I pulled those in, and it now had these events available, which was my south loitering, which again matches my south loitering here on my camera, and rising and falling. So this is when it starts and this is when it stops. That's the terminology that the Swedes use in Access when they create these type of things. To them, rising and falling is like open and close, I guess, or active and inactive. So you'll see that in addition to that, I have all of these other events. So these are all camera side capabilities. these are things that my camera can do that I can directly tap into. So I just came down in, I found those two that were now visible because I had pulled them in and created them here. So if I created a new zone, I'd have to refresh that, but I could pull those in as well. And those became available, which is how I built my view. So again, not overly complicated. It's really simple to come in. You probably already own this feature on a lot of your cameras. Come in, set up a zone, say I want to know if people are in this area for more than a few seconds. You'll notice I have it as an individual, but you could set it up as a group of people. And then I come into Milestone, I refresh that, I pull it in, and then I go build a rule around it. So really within just a few minutes, I can easily set up this alert, tell it to activate an audio file, send me an email, push notification. I actually get these as push notifications to through my Milestone app on my cell phone. And I'll pop that up here at the very end and just show you some of the mobile side of all of this, but very, very handy. On another note, let's look at a couple of the other Guard Suite analytics. So Fence Guard. So this is what it'll look like when you come in. You just start it, you open it. It's going to open a new window. Here's my Fence Guard. So if I had a fence line, again, you don't have to use it as a fence line. If I click in here, it puts a new point in. Can draw it around wherever I want. Put another point in, you know. So you could actually have it follow a fence. Now, as I look at it, I can change my directions on what, if I'm looking for alerts coming into the area or out of the area. You'll see those little red arrows change directions. And then I just give it a name. I'd give this profile a name right here. That way I can find it when it shows up in Milestone. Same short-lived and small objects filters that I can put in. That's Fence Guard. Again, quite simple, but if you want to get an alert from your system as objects come across, you can test alarm, and this visual confirmation allows it to light up when a car does trigger the alarm or an object triggers the alarm.
And Aaron, is just to jump in real quick, as long as the camera is a P or Q series, that's a built-in, these are built-in analytics, right? There's no additional fee.
Yep, all the newer ones, and they've got to be the right firmware and above. It's just a matter of processor. They have to have one of the newer Axis ArcPec chips in them in order to handle this. But it's not a new thing. It's been around for several years. So chances are if you've got a P or Q series camera, it's there. It may require a firmware upgrade or something like that. And possibly device pack upgrade in Milestone, which Brandon and the rest of the support team love to do or to assist you in doing. Last one in here, we don't necessarily see used quite as much, but there's some real value, excuse me, is the Motion Guard. So what Motion Guard does, if you're familiar with Milestone and how they handle motion, is I come in and I can pick areas within the camera. I can set exclude regions. Let's get rid of that grid, but I can exclude areas, for example, up here, but I am one motion zone. No matter what I do, I'm still detecting based on one motion zone. Well, what do you do if you need to detect in multiple areas within your screen for either motion or activity? You want to trigger off of motion in the camera. That's where Motion Guard can be convenient. So I come in here, similar to what my other ones look like. As far as capabilities, I can add points by clicking, right click takes them away. But I come in, I can set up a motion area. So I could say, all right, if there's activity around this door, something simple, I can come in and set all of my same filters that I had there. I can then come in and add another one. Default setting, sure. Now I'm setting a separate one. I can have each one of these trigger independently. So if you wanted to set one around every door independently to have it trigger, that's something that could be done, right? So maybe I want to know when my dumpsters get emptied. I don't believe they're coming to pick them up. So I throw a box around my dumpsters, each one separately. That way I get a trigger every time I'm seeing them. So there's one, there's two. I can keep adding. Then I can pull those into Milestone and have those trigger recording in Milestone or, you know, an email notification or anything else. Really, it's just a trigger point for all the capability that Milestone has. So that's really what the Guard Suite is. That's what it does. Really handy, built in to most of your cameras. I did want to show one other. This is our Axis thermal camera. So thermals have great value. We actually used it for police. We're doing some work around here the other day for something that happened, horrible event here, but our thermal camera was the only camera that picked it up because it was way off in the distance, and thermal doesn't care if it's day or night, right? Looks the same to a thermal. So this is an edge analytic. I mentioned that it was originally a company called Hemez, who just rebranded to Evalon. There's no acquisition. They just thought they'd want a new brand. But this is running right on my camera. This is an edge analytic. If you've ever heard that term, this is what it looks like. From here, Hemez is really good about looking at movement within really any camera, but especially within thermals. You can almost see all those little pixelated dots. This is where it's learned where objects currently are, and it learns those. I've masked out some areas. So that crosshair you saw earlier on some of the alarms of the guy that was wandering around here later in the evening, this is what was picking him up in that circle with the crosshairs. So within here, I'm on the camera right now. I'm configuring it, setting large and small. Here's my learn block. I let it learn in, and then I can update and block off areas, schedules, PTZs. In this case, you know, it's associated to a pan-tilt zoom camera. So it directly communicates with this PTZ in the area, and it tells that PTZ to track where I have activity within my detection zone. So again, another really cool analytic. We also brought this one into Milestone from my thermal here. Thermal. And this was one of my available events. So you'll see Eagle Eye, which is what this is called, Eagle Eye here, was my trigger. And now from there, now that it's in here as an available event for this camera, now I go in and I create my rules, and I created my alarms all off that trigger. Again, very simple, really quick to do. So this allows us to pull all of these edge capabilities instead of coming in here and setting up a mail server on this camera and trying to figure out some way, or firing an output and then monitoring that, finding ways to get the features of this camera into Milestone. A lot of that's just built in now. We have this same type of options available. So license plate recognition, we've got it set up here. It works quite well. So you'll see as cars come through. This is using an Axis Q1700 camera, and it works great. It captures it. If you've ever tried to get a good crisp plate from normal cameras, really any normal camera, it's really challenging because you get just even the slightest bit of blur can make it difficult to read that plate. We're actually looking out probably 100 feet away from our building at a sharp angle, and we're getting a really nice read. Even at night, it has an IR illumination. But this is just delivering a nice image to us that we can gather, and then Milestone is running an analytic in this case that we can filter off of, right? So I could come in here, for example, I can create match lists, and we'll just look for Stone Fleet, and I'm gonna look in the last 7 days. So here's every time one of our Stone vehicles, so we have a match list. Every time one came through, there's my plate. It flags it in this list. And we are able to now trigger off that. So if you want to get a notice as certain people came up, we had a customer who caught somebody stealing copper last year, I believe, and they were able to jump on and pull their license plate up, and instead of seeing that they stole copper one time, they were able to see they came on campus and stole copper, 4 or 5 times. So you have that history. We can search through those and look back. We can also do some cool things like the new search capability within Milestone. So this used to have a different name, but this now is really a tool to pull in all sorts of third-party metadata into Milestone. So I launched it on this camera, but if I want to filter for, let's filter for vehicles, and I can filter, I could say, show me all the Utah plates, right, that it saw coming through, because that's a parameter within my license plate recognition. Moving closer, moving away, maybe just people that were part of my Stone fleet match list. And let's look over 7 days. So you're going to see this more and more as we go on, where all sorts of information is going to be available. If you're running a, brief cam and you have their analytics that filters by metadata around colors, you want to filter by backpacks. All of these filters are being embedded right inside of Milestone. So this is just one example of how I can take a license plate recognition. It's a plugin or a third-party analytic. I pull it in, and now everything LPR is doing is available right here. And here's my video of that event. So anyways, very cool, very handy tool. So I think that takes us to what the highlights of what we wanted to cover. I would here just at the very end like to throw up on the screen real quick our mobile app and just show you what some of these features look like in mobile, because it is very handy. So let me just swap over real quick, but any questions while I'm getting swapped over?
None have come through on the chat, Aaron, but if anybody has a question, feel free to jump in. And, obviously, if you have to jump off, we appreciate you guys joining us. Yeah, this has been cool. So while Aaron's getting that swapped over, feel free to jump in.
Hey, Aaron, I have one question for you on the Guard Suite.
Yeah, go ahead.
I looked on a couple of our cameras while you were talking, and I see the motion detection, but I don't see anything to do with Guard Suite on there. But it gives you the option to add or check out more apps, and like the Fence Guard is one of the things listed on the access page that comes up. Is that something that can be downloaded or added to those cameras?
Yeah, definitely. So originally Guard Suite, when we're looking at cameras, let me actually jump to Axis's. Originally Guard Suite on Axis cameras was an add-on product. It was a paid-for product, and then Axis rolled that in as a free product not too long ago. I mean, within, I want to say 6 months. I could be off on my timeline, but it wasn't that long ago that they took it from being a purchased add-on. So Guard Suite does require a certain version of firmware, so network video products running 7.0 or higher. So first would be, let's check that your camera is capable of that, right? It's one of the newer processors or chipsets that can. But if you look at the firmware that's available, so if your camera is running, so just maybe as a point to show where that's done. But if you come up to your camera and go to its about, firmware version on this one's 8.50.1. So if you're running an older firmware, I could come in and say on a Q3517, Q3517 firm. If you just search for firmware, it'll take you into Axis's website, and I can come in here and see the available firmware versions that there are.
Aaron, we can't see your screen.
Oh, let me push back up my. Sorry. So on my camera, I come over here and look at my about page, shows my firmware version. And then if you have a lower version than the 7.0, so here's the Guard Suite. So they require products need to be able to run 7.0 or higher firmware to support Guard Suite. So as long as you have one, then you can come look at your camera and see what, if you just do a search for it, go to the support and documentation, and you'll see what versions of firmware are available. As long as we can get above 7.0 firmware, then that Guard Suite will show up or is capable. So in the past, you used to have to down or upload it to the camera, and now it'll come with it.
Okay, for cameras that may have been installed prior to that, but are operating on that higher firmware. For this one, for example, is 8.40. Is that something that could be uploaded to the camera?
Definitely, yeah. Yep, if the camera's capable of it, we can come and grab that guard suite software. Let me see. So link over. But yes, the answer is yes, we can upload that to it. Not a problem. So you'll see right here, here's my download for loitering guard, for example, or fence guard was on the other one. And there is a list here as well of compatible cameras. So you can come and look at your fixed cameras, go down the list, make sure your camera's on that list. Which really just means it's got the newer chipset and processors on those. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to swap over to mobile real quick and we'll wrap up. Okay. So here's my Milestone Mobile. So around the access control, you're going to notice that we have this new button available, this bottom one, which is our access control. Well, that's not showing what it should be right now. That's disappointing. Let's go over here. All right, so these are our alerts that we're getting. So these come through as push notifications to my device. So you'll see that you can scroll down the list of any of the alarms. So I did actually create alarms that are specifically assigned to me, whereas I can also go to all alarms. So here's Brandon at my door. Again, very simple to jump around and jump between these. But we do have those alerts. It is nice to get those push notifications. We're all used to that through our mobile devices. So any of these type of alerts, if you want to get real-time alerts, we just go in and make sure our phone's allowing push notifications from the Milestone mobile app. And as long as it is, then it's going to pop up on your screen. So at night, middle of the night, I get all sorts of strange alarms that I can quickly click on, and it links me right over to those. I actually had a couple from last night. See if they still show up.
You're required to log in.
Let me hurry and change something real quick so I can show you what the access control looks like.
It's probably smart that you set alarms when Brandon Fleming is entering your office. That's I would want to be alerted of that too.
So we changed that one parameter that doesn't pass through to mobile. So let's see if we can get it to hurry and swap over, because this is really cool to see on the access control side. We're not getting it to come through. I apologize. That's where it's at. We'll refresh our mobile and see if it can get it real quick. But maybe as just a side note, if you haven't ever seen the video push, this is where it's at. A lot of your apps probably won't have this, but let's see here. So this is what video push looks like inside of Milestone. So if you ever are looking to turn your cell phone on your system into a camera, see, once I start it, you're looking at my screen. And now it's showing up. Now we'll get 1,000 layers deep of video looking at video. So that's video push that's in there just as a distraction. Anyways, that's really the highlights of what we wanted to talk about today. Happy to take any questions if anybody has any, but I think if not, we'll cut everybody loose and not drag this on.
Yeah, feel free to jump in if you have questions, and if not, we'll wrap this up.
Again, if there's anything you saw today you'd like to figure out how to do it on yours, I sounded like Ryan that was asking about the firmware earlier. Anyways, if you have any questions around it, please reach out. We're happy to jump in and go into more detail on any of these things we showed you, into the edge analytics, integration with access control, and how that looks and functions.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll send yeah, we'll have this posted to our YouTube channel and a recording of this if you weren't able to fully dial in. I know everybody's doing multiple things at once. So yeah, thanks again, Aaron, Aaron and Brandon, for getting this going. And thank you for all making the time with us today. Join us Friday if you're able to for Demystifying the Cloud. Aaron will be manning that again, and our friends at Tiger Technology as well. So have a great day, everybody.